It was just my son packing for a trip he planned for weeks or so, I thought. But when I leaned over to help him fold his favorite shirt, Jacob whispered something that made my heart stop. I didn't know what to say, and yet somehow understood everything. Where are you watching us from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Let me tell you how it all started. It was late Sunday afternoon, and the house had that quiet hum to it, the kind that creeps in when something's about to change. Jacob was heading back to Chicago the morning after spending 2 weeks with me in Georgia. He always said these visits were to unplug, but I knew he came to check on me to make sure I was eating, walking, breathing, being okay, as he put it. I'd been doing better, truly. Ever since his father passed 4 years ago, life had been an uneven road, but I wasn't falling apart. Not anymore. The silence still pressed in at night, but I had my little routines, my garden, my books. And Jacob, well, he'd grown into such a thoughtful man, so much like his father in the kindest ways. Calm, protective, always watching out for me. The guest room, which still had his old high school posters tucked in the back of the closet, looked like a tornado had hit it. Clothes everywhere, a half-zipped suitcase on the bed, and Jacob sitting cross-legged on the floor sorting socks like a boy going off to summer camp. I leaned against the doorframe, watching him for a moment. He hadn't shaved that morning, and the scruff made him look rugged, older. He was 31 now, but I still saw the baby I once rocked to sleep on stormy nights. You're hopeless at folding, I teased, walking in with a warm smile. He glanced up, chuckling. And you're still a perfectionist, Mom. Guilty, I said, not even next to him. I picked up one of his shirts, the blue one with the little white birds he always wore when he needed a confidence boost, and began folding it neatly. He watched me for a few seconds longer than usual. You know you don't have to do this, he said quietly. I want to, I replied without looking up. Let me take care of you for once. You take care of everyone else. He didn't answer that, and I didn't press. There was a soft comfort in the silence between us, the kind that only comes after a lifetime of shared memories, scraped knees, late-night chats, burnt Christmas cookies. I reached for another shirt, brushing his arm. That's when it happened. He leaned in slightly, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath near my ear, and whispered, I almost didn't leave this time. I froze, fingers still on the fabric. What? I said softly, eyes meeting his. Jacob looked down, almost embarrassed, but his voice didn't shake. I don't know why I'm saying this now. Maybe because it's safer since I'm leaving. But these 2 weeks, they felt different. I saw you in a different way. Not just as Mom. I sat back on my heels, the world pausing for a breath. He ran a hand through his hair and gave a nervous laugh. God, that probably sounded weird. I just mean you're not just my mother. You're a woman. And I think I noticed that more than I ever have. My heart thudded against my ribs, not from shock, but from how calmly he'd said it. How honest it felt. There was no joke in his tone, no hint of playfulness. Just a man trying to put a feeling into words he probably didn't even know how to name. I should have been angry or confused or something, but I wasn't. I wasn't, because I'd felt it too, in small, invisible ways. The way our hands brushed when we did dishes, the long talks on the back porch, eyes lingering just a beat too long. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. It wasn't about romance or some wild, impossible fantasy. It was about connection. Two souls weathered by time and loss, seeing each other with fresh eyes. It scared me, but it also comforted me in a way I hadn't felt in years. You're not leaving because of that, are you? I asked quietly. He hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I thought if I stayed any longer, I might say something I couldn't take back. My lips parted, but nothing came out. What could I say? That I'd felt a shift to. That in the silence of this house, he'd filled a space I didn't even know was hollow. That I had lain awake at night after our talks, wondering why the sound of his laughter made me feel beautiful again. Instead, I just touched his hand. Let's not rush to label things, I said after a pause, voice barely above a whisper. Feelings can be surprising, but they're not wrong. He looked up at me, eyes searching. I just want you to know, he said, that whatever I feel, it's not coming from a place of confusion. It's respect. It's deep. I'd never want to hurt you. I know, I said, squeezing his hand. I know, Jacob. The suitcase sat half-packed on the bed. The sun had dipped lower, casting golden light through the curtains. We didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. Something had shifted between us. Subtle, tender, real. And as we sat there side by side, I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew we had crossed into a new kind of truth. One that would ask us to be honest and brave. The next morning, the air felt different. It wasn't cold exactly, but there was a heaviness in it, the kind that settles over your shoulders before a storm. I stood by the kitchen window in my robe, watching the sun rise through the mist that clung to the grass. A cup of tea warming my hands, but doing nothing for the chill crawling up my spine. Jacob hadn't come down yet. After what he said last night, that gentle quiet confession, sleep had been slippery. My mind replayed every word, every look, every moment in that cluttered guest room. Was it real? Did he really mean it? Was I crazy for not shoving it down instantly? But it wasn't disgust. It wasn't shame. It was something softer, deeper, a kind of ache. Not from guilt, but from being seen. Really seen for the first time in what felt like forever. The kettle clicked, snapping me out of the spiral. I poured another cup just as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Jacob entered, still in the same sleep shirt, hair tousled, eyes puffy from a restless night. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone even. "Morning." His voice was low, careful. He walked toward the counter and reached for a mug, our arms brushing. That simple touch sent a shiver up my spine again, the way it had the night before. I didn't know what to do with this new awareness. All these years I had taken care of him, wiping his tears, patching scraped knees, making birthday pancakes in the shape of stars. Now here we were, two adults with history between us, and something else quietly blooming beneath it. I wasn't sure if he'd still want to talk, he said, stirring his coffee. I wasn't sure either, I admitted, but here we are. He leaned against the counter, mug in both hands. Did I mess things up? No, I said. But things have changed. He nodded, eyes fixed on the swirling cream in his cup. It's just I've been seeing you differently for a while now, he said. At first I thought it was guilt or grief, missing dad, missing connection. But the more time I spent with you, really spent, I realized it wasn't about anyone else. It was about you. I'd looked up at him slowly. Me? Yeah. You've always been this steady presence, Mom. But lately I see the woman behind all that. The woman who still laughs with her whole face. Who sings along to records when she thinks no one's listening. The way your eyes soften when you're lost in thought. I see it. All of it. I swallowed. You're not just my son anymore, Jacob. You're a man and a good one. I think that's what's making this so confusing for me. He stepped closer. Not to invade, not to push, just to be near. I don't want to confuse you. I just don't want to lie to you either. Not about this. I looked down into my tea, watching the little whirlpool at the center. Everything in me was spinning too, but at the core there was calm. Like part of me had known this was coming. Not the details, but the shift, the closeness, the feeling of standing at a threshold. We're family, Jacob, I said carefully. There are lines. I know, and I would never cross one you weren't okay with ever. There was such sincerity in his voice. I felt my defenses crumbling a little more. I don't know what I'm okay with yet, I admitted. His eyes searched mine. Can I show you something? I raised a brow. Right now, he nodded and walked toward the hallway, beckoning me with a tilt of his head. I followed, heart hammering in my chest like I was chasing something secret. He led me to the guest room, still half messy from yesterday's packing. He picked up his tablet from the nightstand and pulled something up. A folder of pictures, not of his travels or friends, but of us. Photos from every visit over the last few years. Laughing together at the farmer's market. Me reading on the porch swing. My hands in the dirt of the garden. Close-ups I didn't know he took. I've been collecting these, he said, voice low. Because every time I came here I saw you. And I didn't want to forget how it felt. My throat tightened. No one had looked at me like that in years. Like I mattered, like I was beautiful in the most ordinary moments. I sat down on the edge of the bed, tablet in my lap, thumbing through photo after photo. I look happy, I whispered. You are, he said, and I think part of that is you seeing yourself through my eyes. Finally, I looked up at him then, seeing the same boy I'd raised and the man who had grown beyond me, yet still carried my heart in ways I couldn't explain. I don't know what this is, I said. But I know it's real. I'm not asking for anything, Jacob said, kneeling gently in front of me. I just needed you to know that you're not invisible, that you're not just Mom, you're Hannah, and you matter. My hand found his cheek before I even realized what I was doing. His eyes closed at my touch, not with lust but with relief. Gratitude, a kind of peace I didn't expect to see there. We stay like that for a long moment, breathing in the same space. No words, no demands, just understanding. When I pulled away, there were tears in both our eyes. He stood slowly backing away, giving me space. "I'll finish packing," he said softly. "Let me know if you want to talk more." I nodded, still holding the tablet. As he turned back to the suitcase, I glanced at the last photo on the screen. It was me in the garden, sunlight in my hair, smiling at something he just said. It was the most alive I'd looked in years. And for the first time in a long while, I wondered what would happen if I let myself feel everything I had buried. The day stretched on like it didn't know what to do with itself. The sun rose high, but the warmth outside felt distant, almost irrelevant to the world we now inhabited inside the house. I kept myself busy in the kitchen, chopping vegetables I wasn't hungry for, cleaning a counter that was already clean, wiping down the stuff it up twice. Jacob hadn't said much after that morning. He'd stayed upstairs, mostly finishing his packing, making calls, typing away on his laptop. But I could feel him in the house, the weight of his presence, the tension that clung to the air like humidity before a summer storm. Around noon, I sat on the back porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the birds fuss in the feeder. My heart hadn't stopped fluttering all morning, like it was pacing back and forth inside my chest, waiting for a decision I didn't know how to make. What was this feeling? It wasn't just attraction. No, it was something more intricate, deeper, emotional. It was knowing someone so thoroughly for so long that even the slightest change between you was seismic. Jacob wasn't just a visitor anymore. He wasn't just my son. Somehow through time and grief and shared silence, he had become a mirror. One that saw me clearer than I saw myself. The screen door creaked open behind me. "Hey," he said gently. "Hey." He sat beside me, close but not touching. We both stared out at the yard like it held the answers we were afraid to speak aloud. "I was thinking," he said. "Maybe I'll delay my flight." I turned to look at him. "Why?" He met my eyes. "Because I don't want to leave you in the middle of all this." I said too much. Dropped too much on you. You were honest. I said that's not a crime. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Yeah, but I didn't give you a chance to breathe before changing everything." I was quiet for a moment. The cicadas buzzed lazily in the trees. I sipped my tea. "You know what the hardest part has been?" I finally said. He looked at me, waiting. "Being seen again. Really seen. After your dad died, I stopped being a woman in my own eyes. I was just his widow, your mother, someone who folded laundry and went to bed early. I thought that part of me, the part that wanted affection, admiration, touch, had withered away quietly without anyone noticing." Jacob didn't interrupt. He just listened closely, fully. "But then you said what you did and something woke up inside me. Not just because you said it, but because I felt it too. Not just now, before, slowly over time. And I didn't want to look at it. But I see it now." His voice was soft, raw. "I see it too. Every day I'm with you." We sat there side by side on the old porch swing, the breeze brushing across our skin like a hesitant whisper. I closed my eyes and let the quiet fill the space. Then he reached out gently, carefully, and placed his hand over mine. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't suggestive. It was grounding. And I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned my palm upward and laced my fingers through his. A simple silent gesture. A moment of mutual acceptance. "You've grown into such a strong man," I whispered. "Kind, thoughtful. You've taken care of me more than I've taken care of myself these past few years." "I just wanted you to feel loved," he replied, his thumb tracing slow light circles on the back of my hand. "Because you deserve that more than anyone." We sat there for what could have been hours, lost in the warmth of each other's presence, not trying to label anything or make sense of what was happening. Eventually we moved inside. The afternoon sun cast long golden streaks across the hallway floor as we walked toward the living room. I sat on the couch while he started a fire in the old stone hearth, a little tradition of ours even in summer. It wasn't about warmth. It was about comfort, home. He sat next to me, this time closer than before. His thigh pressed gently against mine, and I could feel the heat of his skin through the soft fabric of his jeans. "I don't know what this is," I murmured. "I don't know what it means." "We don't have to know yet," he said. "But I want to be here with you. For however long you want me to be." His words unraveled something inside me. The knot of fear, of shame, of all the rules and roles I had boxed myself into. "I want you here," I said before I could talk myself out of it. His eyes softened and he reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from my cheek. That small touch sent a ripple of warmth through me. Not just physical but emotional. A stirring I hadn't felt in years. He leaned forward slightly, his face inches from mine. "May I?" he asked, not demanding, not assuming, just asking. I hesitated for a heartbeat. Then I nodded. His lips met mine with the gentlest pressure, tentative, searching, full of unspoken emotion. It wasn't a kiss of lust. It was a kiss of reverence, of trust, of rediscovery. When we parted, our foreheads rested together, breathing softly in sync. "I don't want to lose what we have," I whispered. "You won't," he said. "I'll guard it with everything I have." That night, we didn't cross any lines. We didn't rush into something just because of a moment's impulse. We simply curled up on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around me, the fire crackling quietly beside us. I fell asleep there, wrapped in a safety I hadn't known I needed. Not because of the past, but because of what we were building now, something honest, something slow, something built on respect and emotion. And as I drifted off in that cocoon of warmth and acceptance, I realized something. Sometimes the heart finds its way home in the most unexpected person. The morning came slowly, filtered through gauzy curtains and the scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. I blinked awake, still nestled into the curve of Jacob's arm, the blanket from the couch draped loosely over us. His chest rose and fell in a gentle rhythm beneath my cheek. It was still early. That soft golden hush before the world begins speaking again. I stayed there for a while, listening to the sound of his heartbeat, feeling the weight of his arm around my shoulders. My mind had questions, of course, but my body felt still, grounded, peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Eventually he stirred. "Hey," he murmured, voice cravely with sleep. "Hey," I replied, lifting my head to meet his eyes. They were soft and clear, steady. He brushed a strand of hair off my forehead and smiled, warm and without hesitation. I could wake up like this forever. My heart tightened with that strange mix of joy and guilt I hadn't quite worked through yet. But I didn't pull away. I sat up slowly, stretching as the early sun lit the room in soft amber. "Coffee's already brewed," he said. "I set the timer last night." "You always think ahead," I said, standing and wrapping the blanket around my shoulders like a shawl. He followed me into the kitchen, barefoot and comfortable, as if he'd lived here all his life. In many ways he had, but this felt new, different. He wasn't just visiting. He wasn't a guest. He was part of this space now in a way that neither of us had defined, and yet both of us understood. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The clink of spoons and the hum of the refrigerator, the only sounds between us for a while. "I've been thinking," I said, finally, crafting my mug, "about everything." His eyes searched mine. "Me too." I looked out the window past the garden and the fence where the humsuckle bloomed. "I don't want to hide from this. Whatever it is, I'm not ashamed of how I feel, but I'm scared." "Of what?" he asked softly. "Of getting hurt, of hurting you, of crossing a line we can't uncross." He nodded slowly. "I understand. I think about that too." He reached across the table, palm up. I placed my hand in his without hesitation. "I don't need labels," he said. "I don't need promises or declarations. I just want to be with you in whatever way you are comfortable with, even if that means just sitting on the porch holding your hand, knowing we see each other differently now." Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming tenderness in his voice, the simplicity, the respect. "It's been a long time since I felt chosen," I whispered, "not out of duty but out of want." "I choose you," he said, "not just as my mother, but as a woman I deeply admire. I always have." That was the moment something inside me shifted permanently. A surrender not to some reckless desire, but to the reality that love in all its complicated forms often doesn't look the way we expect. It doesn't follow rules. It just shows up quietly, persistently, and asks if we're brave enough to receive it. That day, we didn't do anything dramatic. We didn't run away or disappear into some fantasy. We cleaned up the house together. We folded his clothes again, properly this time. We laughed about the ones he still refused to give up, even with holes in the sleeves. We walked to the farmer's market side by side, brushing shoulders like we always did. Only now there was a secret between us, a quiet understanding. That night we sat on the porch as the sun set. I leaned into him as he wrapped a blanket around us both. The world carried on around us, birds calling out from the trees, wind rustling the leaves, the occasional hum of a car in the distance. "Will you come back sooner this time?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I can stay away long," he replied. "Not after this." I nodded, my cheek resting against his shoulder. "Then I'll leave the porch light on." We stayed there long after the stars came out, the silence between us no longer uncertain, but sacred. We didn't need to rush forward or define what tomorrow held. We had this moment, this closeness, this truth. Over time things didn't get easier. There were moments of doubt. There were things we chose not to share with others. Some days I questioned everything. But he never made me feel wrong. He never made me feel less than cherished. And slowly my fear gave way to trust. Jacob didn't just help me pack away grief and loneliness. He helped me unpack something I had long buried. The belief that I could still be seen, still be loved, not just as a mother, but as a whole woman. And that changed everything. Thank you for listening to my story. If it stirred something in you, no matter how quiet, I hope you let it grow. Because sometimes the heart doesn't follow the map, it follows the connection. And if we're lucky, we find our way to something we didn't even know we needed. Now tell me, where are you watching?